Revenge films.
My name is Tom. I met my wife, Millie, at a client's drinking party 2 years ago, and we got married a year ago. I owned a huge piece of land that I inherited from my grandfather, so I built a huge house, too huge for just the two of us to live in after we got married. I used to work in architecture, so it had always been my dream to live in a large house. I worked really hard to make my dreams come true, and the house I built with a 35-year loan was so comfy to live in. Until that happened. 2 months after we moved into our new home, my wife brought her parents over. She hadn't told me anything about it, so I was surprised. "I guess you're visiting us. I haven't prepared anything, so maybe I'll go and get some drinks." I was about to go out when my mother-in-law said,
"What are you saying? We're not here to visit, but we're going to move in with you."
She said to me. I thought she was joking at first, but she wasn't the type to make jokes, so I sensed that she was telling the truth, and I called my wife to come to the room next door. "What is going on? You never told me about this."
Our house is huge. Why can't they move in with us?
She didn't look sorry at all. When I told her it was unacceptable for her to decide without consulting me, she got mad.
Do you not want to live with my family?
She yelled. I guess her voice was loud enough for them in the living room to hear.
What? You don't want us to move in with you?
My mother-in-law got furious. Since then, my mother-in-law started to treat me harshly, and when I was at home, she would always complain. It turned out that they had already sold their house, and they had nowhere else to go. So I had no other choice but to let them move in with us. But they never paid for their living expenses despite moving in with us, and I had to pay for everything, including the house loan, utility bills, and food expenses. Of course, we were barely making ends meet with just my salary, so if they're going to continue living with us, I asked my wife to find a job too. Then my wife said,
"You said I could be a housewife. How dare you say that now? I'll sue you for marriage fraud."
That was what she started to say. It's true that she wanted to be a housewife before we got married. Okay then, I'll depend on you with the housework. That was what we agreed on, but I thought she knew better that it wasn't going to work anymore in this situation. Seeing her uncooperative behavior made me irritated, but whenever she was unhappy with something, she would always tell her mother about it, causing trouble for me, so I couldn't say anything. My mother-in-law's sarcasm was getting worse and worse. She would say,
"A guy who doesn't make much money like you is basically a pet."
She insulted me like this. When this happened, my mentally weak father-in-law would look at me with pity, but it didn't seem like he would ever stop his wife. One day, I heard excited voices from the living room when I came home from work. When I opened the door, I found many boxes of pizza and bottles of alcohol on the table, and they were having a party without me. I knew something was wrong with such a feast going on before my payday. What's going on? When I asked my wife,
"We ordered delivery using your credit card. Oh, but there's none for you. So eat some instant noodles or something, okay?"
she replied. "You used my credit card without asking me?" When I asked, my mother-in-law replied,
"What's the big deal? Don't be so stingy."
So I couldn't help but say, "Because of you all, we're barely making ends meet." I slipped out what I had been feeling. That moment, she made an expression that resembled a demon.
"How dare you say that to your wife's parents?"
she yelled. By the time I realized what I had done, it was too late, and she grabbed me, unable to calm her anger down. My wife said as she watched,
"You deserve it after what you said to my mom."
She took her mother's side. My mother-in-law, who had a firm build, grabbed me by my collar, and I rushed back to my room to escape. I was too scared to leave my room that night, and the next morning I left for work before anyone woke up. That night, I felt too depressed to go home, but when I arrived home after work and slowly stepped into the house, my mother-in-law suddenly said,
"Oh, our pet is home. You can't come in."
She led me to the garden. Then I found a doghouse which wasn't there until yesterday. She pointed towards it.
"This is your house starting today. Never come inside again."
She forcefully kicked me out and locked the door. At that moment, it started raining, so I had no other choice but to spend the night in the small doghouse. Now that I was forbidden to go inside, I renovated the doghouse, installed a lock, secretly went inside the house to get my most important belongings, and hid them there. I started living at a hotel, and now that I had more time to think alone, I was able to calm down and think rationally. As a result, I decided to get a divorce without asking them to give back my house. Alongside my preparations to get a divorce, I also started preparing for disowning the house. I secretly met up with my father-in-law. "I'll hand over the house to you. Let's go through the procedure to change the name of the owner." Then he said, "Are you handing it over to us? Thank you." He casually agreed and went through the procedure. I didn't know how much income he had, but considering how easily he underwent the procedure, I felt relieved knowing that he would be able to pay the loan. The house was successfully handed over to my father-in-law, and everything would end if I could just get a divorce with my wife. That was when it happened. When I was sleeping at my hotel, feeling exhausted, I was woken up with a sudden, violent shake. "It's an earthquake!" I abruptly woke up, and after a while, the shake stopped. The guests of the hotel were leaving their room one by one and evacuating using the stairs, so I joined them to go out. The shake was very violent, so the electricity was cut off, and I could see that several houses had collapsed. I knew this was going to be quite a struggle, and the guests had to spend the night in the hall on the first floor following the rules announced by the hotel. The next day, when I went back home after a long time, remembering that I'd hidden my most important belongings in the doghouse, the house had collapsed, resulting in a state that was unable for anyone to live in. When I was in shock in front of the house, my wife and parents-in-law spotted me.
"Contact the insurance company right now. I assume we have the earthquake insurance."
My mother-in-law said to me, "I already terminated the earthquake insurance. This is not my house anymore." Then my wife and her mother went crazy. Looks like my father-in-law hadn't told them about the changing of the name of the owner yet, so my wife and my mother-in-law knew nothing about it. I explained everything, and when I handed my wife the divorce papers...
"What are we going to do with this house if we get a divorce? Where are we supposed to live?"
She refused to get a divorce.
"Let's calm down. We still have the loan to pay."
My mother-in-law said, "We changed the name of the owner so the loan would also be deducted from your husband's bank account. The house is all yours now, so it's none of my business." Then my wife and her parents started to panic. I left the scene after getting my belongings from the doghouse, ignoring them, and I decided to stay at the hotel until things calmed down. Since then, my wife has been calling me repeatedly.
"Please don't get divorced with me. It's impossible for us to pay the loan and the rent at the same time. Our family needs you,"
she said to me. So I told her that I'll hire a lawyer if she doesn't agree to our divorce. What my mother-in-law did was moral harassment, so I persuaded her to submit the divorce papers if she doesn't want to pay compensation money, and she reluctantly submitted the papers, allowing us to get a divorce. After that, my wife and her parents started to live in a room located in an old apartment. They couldn't make a living with just her father's salary, and my wife as well as her mother started working part-time to earn their living expenses. But with her problematic and needy personality, she wasn't able to keep her job for long, and that was affecting their living. As they got all stressed out of living an impoverished life, they started fighting with each other often. While they had fierce fights tackling each other, her mother fell on the ground, and because she hit her weak spot, she became disabled, leaving her with no other choice but to rely on a wheelchair. I heard that my wife got depressed taking care of her disabled mother and working many part-time shifts. In my case, a month after the earthquake, I moved into a new mansion with a firm structure, and I started living my free, single life. I was free from stress because I was no longer referred to as a pet, so I think I can live my life with a positive attitude from now on.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.